liberals are. There's a lot to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start at the meme I'm using for my thumbnail. I just thought it was really good. This is somebody's roof of their house, I guess, and they've got Trudeau and they've got Santa peeing on a Trudeau sign. So there you go. I thought that was pretty funny, especially this time of year. And the stakes of all of this. Trudeau represents the globalists, right? It's not just Trudeau himself, but it's the globalists that he represents. And people resent all of their freedoms being taken for, the carbon tax, which is nonsense, being locked down for COVID, which was nonsense, and the rest. And so people are waking up. And fundamentally, it's not about me or you. It's about our kids and their kids, our grandkids, hopefully, right? And this is just a quick 8-second little meme here that I thought the stakes are well described in this. Here we go.
If you stay silent and fail to rock the boat in this war between good and evil, your life might be easier, but your children's won't. If you stay...
And your grandchildren certainly won't, right? And so it's carrot and a stick to motivate people to stand up, to do something, to speak out, right? CTV News, let's start with money and how much people are struggling. CTV News says 40% of single-parent homes can't afford basic needs, says the Salvation Army, so that's not great. And here is a news article about this. Apparently breaking news at the top, though, CTV News says, Canada's inflation rate is steady at 3.1%. What that means, just to make sure we're all aware of what that means, is that the increase in the cost of goods and things is 3.1%, and their target is 2%. So and that's like supposed to be good news, right? Like, look, yay, it's stable at 3%. That doesn't mean anything's getting cheaper. Everything's still getting more expensive by 3.1%. Right? And so that's not great. Here's just a little bit of this article. 1 in 4 Canadians is struggling to afford the rising cost of covering basic needs. New data released by the Salvation Army shows, but that figure climbs even higher for single parents. In a report released on Monday, so it's 25% if you're not single parents, but if you are single parents, it's 40%. In a report released Monday, the Salvation Army outlined how food affordability and housing security remain top issues for Canadians struggling amidst inflation based on more than 1,500 Canadian surveys. Now, 1,500 Canadian surveys is not really a robust temperature of the whole country. It's a little survey looking at these 1,500 people maybe, right? And I don't know if it's weighted. I don't know if there's like age ranges or anything like that with regards to the surveys. And I mean, if you're talking about cost of living, I don't know, like if you're not talking about an election, I don't know that you need a weighted survey, but still 1,500 Canadians is just a very small sampling. And they keep doing this, 1,500 surveys, online surveys. It seems like they're working to get a specific outcome rather than actually honestly reporting on something that's trending. Anyway, they're all talking about it, so we're going to talk about it. John Murray, the Territorial Secretary of Communications with the Salvation Army Canada, says the struggling to afford basic needs extends to Canadians from coast to coast. The figures from our research are troubling and show that Canadians are struggling in every corner of this country, and they're worried about their families' futures, with nearly 60% of Canadians extremely concerned about the rising cost of living and inflation, Murray said in a press release. The situation is dire for single-parent families where parents are going without food to make ends meet. The organization's 2023 Canadian Poverty and Socioeconomic Analysis found that single-parent families are facing the highest degree of financial struggle, while 25% of Canadians fear they do not have enough income to cover their basic needs. According to the report, that percentage climbs to 40% for single-parent households. The survey also shows that 31% of single-person households also feel that their annual income is insufficient for financial security, while 30% of Canadian caregivers feel similar. Caregivers. What's that classified as? It's interesting, and here is a quick case study on CTV News, and they put the numbers on an infographic to make it easier for the viewer to understand. This isn't a gotcha moment really for Freeland. She knows this, and she spins it with the Liberal tap dance. She doesn't really engage with what she's being presented with meaningfully, but here's the interaction. It's not that long, but there's a lot packed into it. Here we go.
recently that the numbers are up at record numbers. There's people who are employed who are using it to buy things like milk and eggs because it's just expensive. I want to give you a real life budget that was provided to our producers by one of their family members. She's a single mom. She has one child that lives with her, and we've got the numbers on a graphic, so it's easier for you and our viewers to follow along. But she makes about $26 an hour, which is above the lowest minimum wage in this country of $14 an hour. In Saskatchewan, in the highest, which is $16.77 in the territories in Yukon. So her weekly take home after taxes is $801, which works out to about $41,697.76 after taxes. So that's a lot higher than the amount that's eligible for your grocery rebate. Those are the people that you called the most vulnerable. But when we break down her expenses, this is where it really hits home. You've got $2,000 for rent, $125 a week in car payment, $145 for car insurance, and then just over $82 for debt repayment. $120 for phone and internet. And it works out to around $3,095 a month. That's before gas and before groceries, and leaves just over $100 for the entire month for her and her daughter. But she is not considered vulnerable in the eligibility of this grocery rebate. So how are people like her supposed to survive? And
Right. So she's not considered vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera. How are they supposed to survive? The answer is, well, Chrystia Freeland is not responding here. So it's interesting how daunting that seems, and the reality that Canada used to be was that you could, and I've illustrated this previously with stories just from when I was growing up, that you could be making not very much money and still pretty well get by. And it seems like now that everything is inflated by a whole lot, you can't get by as well. You can't get by as easily, and that's not very good. Your buying power has also degraded, right? As the money inflated, right? As rents went from $600 to $2,000, how much your money purchased, buying power decreased as well. So like, it's everything got more expensive, right? And so the dollar doesn't go as far, and so that's not good, right? And are people going to blame Trudeau and this government? It seems like they're getting ready for Trudeau to make an exit, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. Justice Queen says places with faster home price increases had a faster decline in birth rates. Faster rising rents are associated with lower fertility for all age groups. For women in their 20s or 30s, if rent is rising, fertility is falling. Is this the plan? Right? Have the West just priced out of having babies? Right? So only people who are coming here from foreign countries have babies, I guess, right? It's wild. Pierre Poilievre's pointing out the cost of living increase as well. There are almost 2 million food bank visits in March 2022, nearly an 80% increase from March 2019. What's Trudeau doing about it? Quadrupling the carbon tax on farmers, First Nations, and families. Not worth the cost. Branding, right? But effective, and all of the Conservatives are using it effectively. The branding is actually working to get people on side, and it's simple, it's straightforward, to the point, very, very concise. It's great propaganda, right? And it's communication. Same thing in politics, I guess. Here's Wall Street Silver. He says, are you prepared for this? It's coming. If you thought you had freedom with CBDCs, it will be utterly clear that you don't. The coming banking collapse is intentional. This will usher in CBDCs. Okay, one of the places that I go to just look for information, see what's going on, see what people are talking about, et cetera, said Joe Biden had somebody crash into his motorcade the other day. And this was a medium big deal. Everybody said Joe Biden are okay. The president's fine. Don't worry about it. He was out of the car when the crash happened, and the car didn't, like the car that bashed into the motorcade didn't get the presidential car. It was just part of the motorcade, right? As far as I understand it. I could be wrong with that. And somebody was saying, is this communications about a Bank of America crash? Because in the background of the pictures was Bank of America. Like there was a Bank of America building behind. And it could, just the angle of the picture, right? Like if you were on the other side of the street taking it from the other side, there wouldn't have been a Bank of America thing. But because the picture was taken on facing that side of the street, Bank of America. So who knows? A lot of people are talking about this. They were talking about the end of the fiat currency being mathematically, it's coming, right? And as they spend money to continue the fiat currency, it loses buying power and so on and so forth. There are consequences to doing what they're doing. So either the fiat currency dies completely and they move over to CBDCs, and then you can have money that expires so they can control inflation and all sorts of other things. There's lots of tools you can do with CBDCs that you can't do with cash, right? So that's why they want to move to it. That's the problem that it fixes, but it also removes freedom completely. So people are talking about how this crisis, this banking collapse crisis, will be used to usher in CBDCs. I hope they're wrong, because I mean, it's going to be really hard to stand against that. You're going to have an entire, like a whole shadow economy, but you're also going to have to participate in the CBDC economy, because I mean, I hope not, right? I hope not. I hope you can absolutely say no, like the masking and stuff, but it seems much more difficult if people start saying, like Tim Hortons or whatever, start saying, no, we can't take that. We only take CBDCs or whatever. Grocery stores start only taking CBDCs, right? The only places that take cash are convenience stores, which is what they tried to do to unvaccinated people in I think it was New Zealand, but there were other places as well that were quite restrictive, and they were trying to basically bully these people into getting vaccinated, complying, and that's what they'll do with CBDCs. That's my prediction. Tucker Carlson is talking about is talking about destroying the United States monetarily and the consequences of all of that. But it's burning down your own house, he says. Burning down your own house intentionally, what they're doing. Here we go.
Too few people pause and ask, well, what is that? Like, these people live here. They don't all have secret island getaways, especially now that Epstein is gone. And so if they succeed in their project of destroying the United States, where are they going to go? It's a little bit like burning your own house down. So why would you do that? That's not
Insurance fraud.
just an act of destruction, it's an act of self-destruction. So is that a political program? No. A political program is designed to help the people who institute it and their voters and donors. Their program helps nobody. If you successfully convince an entire generation of young people not to have children, what you're doing is denying yourself grandchildren, which I can tell you at 54 is kind of the only thing you want. And it's not only the only thing you want, it's the only thing that anyone has ever wanted, because having children and continuing the species, passing on your DNA to future generations you will never meet, is the whole point of life. There is no other point, and there's no other accurate measure of wealth than your descendants.
That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way. But yeah, it's a very interesting outlook. I think that it's possibly correct. I'm not saying either to encourage any kind of insurance fraud, but he asked a question, why would you burn your own house down? And the answer is obvious to me. Insurance fraud. Unrelated. I used to go to a restaurant. The restaurant got sold. The restaurant, shortly after being sold, probably after like 2 months of being operated, maybe 2 or 3 months being operated, the quality was going down a little bit. And because I like to go, and their fries were the best. And then all of a sudden, the restaurant burned down. Shucks. Gosh darn it, eh? Still hasn't been rebuilt or anything like that. So very interesting turn of events. So why would you do that? Like, why would that happen? Or was it just an accident, right? Probably just an accident in the restaurant situation. But there are reasons, and people investigate for reasons. I've seen whole Columbo episodes on it. Contrarian, let's move into elections and talking about how well the Liberals are going to do in an election. Contrarian says, reporter this morning in an interview asks Chrystia Freeland if she thinks Trudeau should resign since 72% of Canadians want that. She says Trudeau and her are doing a great job for Canadians and will continue to do so. So she doesn't pay attention to the polls. So they are very, very confident in their ability to wedge, their ability to win an election. Here we go.
As recently as last week, published some numbers which said 72% of Canadians think that Justin Trudeau needs to step aside. Of the top three people who were named as possible successors, you came out on top alongside of Melanie Joly and Mark Carney. So would you like to lead the Liberal Party of Canada?
I am focused first and foremost on supporting Canadians right now. And you've just pointed out, people need our support. Canadians don't want us focused on ourselves. They want us focused on them. And I am also absolutely supporting our Prime Minister, who is leading our team, doing a really, really great job.
Can they win the next election with him as leader?
Absolutely. But I really have to tell you, Anne Marie, and journalists never believe this. My focus isn't on the polls. My focus is on my neighbors. My focus is on the Canadians I meet when I travel across the country. My focus is on the great parishioners at Church of the Messiah who run the food bank every Wednesday. And my focus is on the people who are in line there in the cold. That's what, that's like, it sounds so kind of sappy, but truly,
The number of people using the food bank is up by 80% since 2019. So that's all on her, right? Like she's the finance minister. Holy smoke, right? Oh, it sounds sappy? Well, it sounds completely like a lunatic, actually. You sound completely out of touch. Sappy. Sure, that's one word for it. National News Watch is reporting Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney outperformed Trudeau as preferred Liberal leaders, survey finds. Who's saying they want Chrystia Freeland as the leader of the Liberal Party? I mean, to lose the next election, I guess so. There's not a lot of people. I don't think there are a lot of people out there who would be enthusiastic about a Liberal Party led by Chrystia Freeland. I don't. But I could be wrong. Mark Carney, in my opinion, is unelectable because his teeth are yellow. So optics matter, and his teeth stand out every time I look at a picture of him. When I was a kid, at the beginning of Hook, the scene is Smee holds a megaphone to his mouth, and he says, "Good morning, Neverland," right? And they zoom in on his teeth, and his teeth are like gross. And ever since then, I've been hypersensitive. Not hypersensitive, but I've noticed things like that, and I thought to myself, people just won't vote for somebody who looks like that. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that people will vote for Chrystia Freeland, and I don't think they'll vote for Mark Carney. I'll leave it there. Disclosed TV is reporting the Federal Constitutional Court in Germany has ruled that the 2021 federal election in Berlin must be partially repeated. That's crazy. The Federal Constitutional Court has decided that the federal election in Berlin must be repeated in a total of 455 districts. That is 31 more districts than the Bundestag decided around a year ago. The background is an election audit complaint from the Union Parliamentary Group in the Bundestag, which was otherwise rejected. There were numerous mishaps in Berlin during the election. People had to wait a long time and queue at polling stations. Ballot papers were incorrect or missing entirely. Polling stations temporarily had to close or remained open until well after 6 p.m. So there were all sorts of irregularities and problems. So elections are being massaged all around the Western world, and that's interesting to note, with Germany included in that. And I mean, Trump's been fighting a crooked 2020 election for a long time, and Tucker Carlson will be talking about that in a minute. But there's a lot of indication that our elections aren't above board, and these guys, our liberals, don't seem worried at all. So that's interesting to note. Brian says the fact that these clowns seem so confident should have everyone on high alert as to what they plan to do to gain an advantage, because based on their record, they're completely toast. Here is CTV News. This is the article he's referring to. Freeland absolutely thinks Liberals can win again under Trudeau and plans to run for re-election. So Chrystia Freeland's running again. Here's Pierre Poilievre, and Liberals and Conservatives have a lot of similar policies. So Trudeau rolled out this 988 suicide prevention hotline, and I haven't called the hotline or anything to that effect, but we're in a situation where we're spending tax dollars on it, and there were people out there saying, like, is this something to connect you to medical assisted death? Like, is this just a fast track to find the people who are susceptible to the suggestion of medically assisted death? Are you genuinely trying to help people? There's a lot of criticism about this suicide prevention line, right? And so now the Conservatives have picked up the suicide prevention hotline, taxpayer funded, right? All this money, and they're fixing it. They're trying to help with it. And so Todd, who's an MP, he's an MP for Member of Parliament for Caribou Prince George, Shadow Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. So he sent a letter to municipalities across Canada asking them to require each municipal building to display the 988 suicide prevention hotline information poster. Within days of sending the letter, the city of Toronto adopted his motion, and 988 posters will be going up in every building. Thanks to the city councilors for getting this passed as quickly as they did. So there you go. He's sending letters and being effective in his ministry. But again, I don't agree. I don't know that we need to be spending money on this. Pierre Poilievre says, "Great work, Todd." So this is a program that's going to be held up by Pierre Poilievre, right? So here's the new boss, same as the old boss, basically. And Greg is talking about Pierre Poilievre and his ties, or the Conservative Party's ties, to the WEF, despite Mr. Poilievre's claims to the contrary. This is a short thread, but we'll go through it. Greg says, Stephen Barber, president of the Conservative Party of Canada. On September 11th, 2023, Stephen Barber was elected president of the National Council of Conservative Party of Canada. You're going to love who he's associated with. Barber replaced Rob Bathison as president of the CPC National Council. The bio for Stephen on the Conservative Party's website is blank. Barber had several positions within the Manitoba government, including assistant deputy minister. In 2018, Stephen posted on X that he, as part of the CIC Winnipeg, was pleased to host a NORAD anniversary celebration with the U.S. consul Tony Palgali. Tony P. The CIC is the Canadian International Council. At the time, Barber would have been a member of and participant of the Winnipeg branch of the Canadian International Council because he was also the treasurer. The present reality of the CIC is as shady as its past. Originally called the Canadian Institute of International Affairs, it was founded in 1928 by Sir Robert L. Borden, the Prime Minister depicted on the Canadian $100 bill. The CIC, led by people in the WEF's Young Global Leadership and Global Shapers programs, states on its website that as a non-partisan charitable organization, the Canadian International Council has provided a platform for citizens to help shape Canada's place in the world. Before moving forward, I want to point out that Pierre Poilievre's campaign chair and World Economic Forum participant John Baird appears to be associated with the Canadian International Council to the point where he does Q&A videos on their website. The Canadian International Council has also hosts the Canadian International Council hosts an annual Globalist of the Year Gala where they acknowledge individuals who demonstrate their commitment to the globalist agenda. Mark Carney introduced the 2013 winner, IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde. Christine L. Another recipient of the Globalist of the Year award that's one heck of an award, eh? I wonder if you can buy one on eBay. Get a Globalist of the Year award in here. Last year, anyway, another recipient is Angela Guerrera, the Secretary of State of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The UN recognizes his contribution to the global agenda. He has worked with the Population Council, UNWEF, and the CIGI. In 2010, the CIC awarded George S. with the Globalist of the Year award. Also in attendance was Mark Carney, former Finance Minister Jim Flaherty, and BlackBerry founder Jim Balsillie. Along with Robert Borden, the group of men at the inaugural meeting of the CIIA included John Defoe, Sir Arthur Currie, and Joseph Flave. Escott Reed, the founder of the Canadian Fabian Society, logo pictured below, was the first permanent secretary under Vincent Massey. I don't know what that means. There's a black dog and a white dog. There's all sorts of symbolism here. Oh wait, no, that's a wolf and a sheep. Yeah, that's not a black dog and a white dog. It's a wolf and a sheep. Okay, Greg says Vincent Massey was a diplomat and Governor General of Canada. His father was the owner of Massey Harris, which became Massey Ferguson. CBC began annual series The Massey Lectures in 1961 in honor of Vincent Massey. He controlled the Rhodes Scholar groups in Canada. But to understand the true history of the Canadian International Council, we need to understand who Cecil Rhodes was. Oh, I've heard Cecil Rhodes' name before. Cecil Rhodes was one of the most wealthy and influential men in the British Empire in the late 1800s. He created the Rhodes Scholarships at Oxford University. Rhodes was financed by N.M. Rothschild and Sons and brought up most of the diamond mining operations in Africa, making him an unbelievably wealthy man. His dream was to have the British Empire rule the world under a secret society of elite inner members. Vincent Massey's father-in-law was George Parkin, who also happened to be Michael Ignatieff's great-grandfather. Parkin's friend Alfred Milner was close friends with Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes left his vast fortune in a trust to establish the scholarships and the round tables. Georgetown professor Carol Quigley wrote the book Tragedy and Hope, in which he talks about an international Anglophile network, the Roundtable Group, which works and operates like communist groups. Carol Quigley also wrote The Anglo-American Establishment, where he goes into great detail about his experiences and perceptions of the Roundtable groups. I don't know much about the Roundtable groups. Sorry, he's kind of going off on more of a tangent than yesterday. I read this thread and it was 10 long, and I thought, okay, so this is a bit longer than I anticipated, and he's off on a bit of a tangent here. So I'll leave it there for now, but there's all sorts of reasons that I have skepticism that the CPC, regardless of Pierre Poilievre's individual intentions, will have any meaningful change from the Liberals. It may seem different, it may feel less expensive, but I think we'll be on the way to central bank digital currencies and so on and so forth, and people will not be able to have the conversations we need to have to solve the problems we should be addressing. In fact, if we identify a problem, like, hey, there's a housing crisis, instead of addressing the actual root of the problem, the immigration, and the fact that we have not enough supply to meet demand, and so we have to bring down demand because you can't increase the supply. Even if you increase the supply, we should increase the supply to bring down the price, even if we bring down the demand. But increasing supply is not going to solve the problem. But the only solution offered by these people is to increase supply. So that's one example of like taking a problem and not solving it, right? So that's unfortunate. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful